But we have a very special offering today, and we will be recording it so you can share this with your colleagues and let them know about it. But today we're having the second of a very special panel. Last year, some of you may recall, we did a student panel on Facebook, which was an application we thought students really could share about how they used it and what it meant to them. And this year they wanted to do another one. These are students that work for the Faculty Center for Learning Development. And so they have completely planned, designed, and put together one on Blackboard, how and what ways Blackboard helps them with their learning, called Student Perspectives on Blackboard. So I'm not going to be introducing them, but I will be introducing Dr. Fred Schweitzer, who I report to, and I'm very pleased to have him. I think he's going to be a wonderful facilitator. I know, because I work for him, how deeply committed he is to teaching and learning and to students, and so I think he's perfect for this. Fred has held many hats at the university. He's serving as professor of human services in the College of Education, Nursing, and Health Professions. He's department chair there, served as both associate and interim dean for ENHP, and he's currently serving as the assistant provost and dean of faculty development. Fred, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here and pleased to have been asked to do this. I had a meeting with the students a week or two ago to talk about this, and I'm very excited about what they have to offer, and I hope you're going to find this enjoyable as well. Let me just quickly introduce the panelists to you. I am Dr. Schweitzer. This is Anthony Maldonado, and sitting next to Anthony is Carrie Brawley. Next is Chris Rogi, is that how you say your name? Rogi. Okay. Nick Greenfield, Kevin Gregory, and Michael Wilson. Come on in. The format for today is that we have 6 questions that the panel has come up with that they thought you might be interested in hearing about. And hearing about from the perspective of both folks who have helped a lot of people with Blackboard, but also folks who have used Blackboard for quite some time, so they can give you that perspective of an end user in a different way. I know many of you have experience with Blackboard as end users from being a faculty member. We have 6 questions. I'll start the conversation by directing a question at one of the panelists, and then they will feel free to chime in. You should feel free to ask questions of them. I will be trying to be mindful of the time because we have an hour, and there are 6 topics I want to make sure that we cover. You have at your table index cards. If, as things go along, there's a question that you are concerned isn't going to get answered or something that's on your mind, write it down, send it up to me, and then if we have some time at the end, we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. Okay? So, we'll begin with Carrie. And the question that I'd like Carrie to start off addressing is, what do you think students today expect in a Blackboard course?
We expect organization that will allow us to be fully prepared for the class. So what we want is the syllabus to be posted. We want the reading list to be posted, because to be quite honest, I lose those frequently. And we also expect the assignments to be posted chronologically so that they are very easy to find. And we want them to be posted for the entire semester. So if later on in the course we want to go back to something else, it's up there and we can find it very easily. And we also want announcements when you post new documents or revised documents so that we don't have to search for them and we don't have to search multiple times in one day to see if anything has been updated. If you post an announcement, it will just be on the homepage when you log in, and we can see immediately what's been updated for which class.
Thank you. Any of you want to add anything to that? How about questions from the audience? All of the things that Carrie is talking about sound like things that you can do, that you would want to do, any issues with those kinds of things, or any additional questions about students' view of Blackboard? Then we will move on to our second question. And this question is, Blackboard is one way of making a big giant step towards a paperless environment. And I know I hear a lot of faculty members expressing their feelings about going paperless. But I'd like to know whether students like the idea of being paperless. And I'm going to ask Nick to start off with this.
Yeah, I believe students do like the idea of being paperless. As you may know, going green is a big trend nowadays, and every little thing we do on this earth impacts it, either good or bad. So everyone has an impact in one way or another. From my personal experience, students like to be paperless because, like Carrie said, organizing is one less thing that we're going to have to worry about. I know I'm not the most organized person, so having everything online eliminates me having to organize my notebook, and just always going to be there no matter what. If I'm out with my friends and I realize, oh no, I have homework due, I don't have my notebook on me, what am I going to do? If there's a computer around who has access to the internet, I'm able to go online, search, see what my professor posted for the assignment. Same thing goes with tests, announcements. Also, oh yeah, in Blackboard, so say you need to go back to something that's been posted earlier on in the semester, a syllabus. I know I misplace syllabuses all the time, and I should start hanging them up in my room or something, but a syllabus is something that professors usually do put on Blackboard when they do, and that's something that I can always go back to and check, and it's something that will always be posted, and I can refer to that whenever. So as long as you have internet or a computer, you don't have to be organized all the time.
Okay, I forgot to ask this question at the beginning. How many of you are full-time faculty members? 2 part-time faculty members? And in other kinds of roles at the university? Okay. So, what do you think about the idea of trying to be paperless? Trying to run a course where almost no actual paper is being exchanged? How does that strike you from your positions?
Well, I guess I wonder how much ends up getting printed out anyway. I've seen that where instructors post and then the students are coming to the library and there's lots of printing going on. It's not even as efficient because it's not double-sided printing, et cetera.
Right. Well, also, that saves a lot of money, and trees going green. So if you're just utilizing printing double sides, that will help. You don't have to completely cut down printing in general. You don't stop printing, but maybe just utilize what you're printing more. Use double-sided when you print, or just post on Blackboard.
Carrie, did you
The only time I print slides offline is when I know we're going to be doing something on them, such as like my econ class, when we'll draw supply and demand curves on them, and we also have to draw the shifts in them. So that's the only time I print them.
So it doesn't, you don't find as students that having things paperless particularly impedes your learning? No. Okay. Jill, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I want to know, because what I found is that students often like the security of hard copies, but also like to have it available online. And so I'm wondering about things like printing out syllabi at the beginning of the semester. I think most of us could save a forest if we didn't print our syllabi and just said the syllabus is online.
Well, I mean, I think that putting things online gives the students the option to print it if they feel that they need that hard copy. And I think there are definitely always going to be people who, no matter how paperless we go, they're still going to feel more secure with that. But I think overall you're reducing a lot, because how many of those end up right in the trash on the way out the door or in a week from that point? And then when you have it online, there's a constant reference all semester long. And I know personally, and I know a lot of other students, when you study, so if you've had handouts all semester, you're unlikely to either have kept them all, stored them all in a notebook or something. But if you can put them all up in Word side by side, or you can refer to them, you can quickly get around through the whole course material without ever needing to print anything. And then I think if you do need to print something to physically write on it or something, you have that option later, but you've saved a lot along the way, because a lot of people will not print. And especially, it's not economical for students to go print because they charge us for the prints. So we're looking for a way to do everything without having to pay for it as well. So there's definitely an incentive for both sides to save.
I see some problems with paperless when I'm reading students' work. And I know that I can grade online, and I did it for one semester thinking I'll save a forest. And it was very, very uncomfortable for me to spend all that time in front of a computer because my brain is wired a little differently than yours since I didn't grow up with computers. However, I also can see that if you submit your papers online and they're graded online and grades are posted immediately, that's very nice for students also. I think, I hear from my students that they really like it that I post grades. And that happens more automatically than if you submit. But on the other side, I also like to see the drafts that students do. And so that isn't going to happen as handily, I think, when papers are submitted online. So I understand student comfort with that, but for me, it's still uncomfortable. Although I post all my documents up on Blackboard, and that makes sense to me.
Well, yeah, just doing that, that's going green away. So, you know, you don't entirely go all the way and just do everything online. But, you know, it's personal preference. You like to have the hard copies and read the drafts, so. You know.
I'm wondering if that statement is absolutely true, that students are comfortable with it.
Definitely.
Have you had experiences, like you post to the digital Dropbox, teacher makes comments, posts it back. You've had that experience?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Well, the only obvious problem is numbers. You're quite right. It takes more time,
Yep.
and but it's better. It's a more thorough. It's more carefully thought feedback. Fine with 15 or 18 or 20 students. Not so good with 30. That's another problem. But that's good to hear.
I'm thinking you can do almost parts. The parts that work out better online might be advantageous to do online, such as assigning the assignment in the first place. The students don't really need a sheet for that. Posting the grades, you can post online and hand their paper back. I think the students handing in a piece of paper with their assignment on it, especially for an English class, is a very good idea, just so you do have that physical copy of it. Doing email is a little, some students like to email their papers, and I think that gets a little messy, so I think Blackboard is definitely a better way to do submitting papers rather than email. But I still think there is a lot of merit in hard copies for final papers and such, and especially drafts as well. But I think some parts can be replaced by paperless, and I think that's what a lot of students would be interested in doing.
Can I ask you to clarify something that you said? I thought I heard you say that, well, you said it was a question of scale or volume, and that doing grading and responding online for a lot of papers would be more time consuming. Do you find that more time consuming than grading a lot of papers that are copied out and
Yes.
on the table? And what is it that takes them the extra time?
Oh, well, apart from just the mechanics of it, it's easier to scribble they're of course more accurate, they're more carefully stated, I think, because you're conscious of that. But it definitely just takes more time in the long run.
I will just add one comment here, although I'm not technically supposed to do this. One of the things that I liked about making my way into this practice was that sometimes I write something by hand on a paper, and then I think, oh, that's not exactly what I meant. But I can't take it back now because there it is. And when I'm doing it online, I can say, all right, let me try that again.
It's definitely better stated, more carefully.
But it does take that.
But you have to, go through the motions for, if it comes as the digital, say the digital Dropbox, and you have to download it into your Word, and then the Word has to be comments, and then it's steps. But it's definitely desirable.
Okay, I guess
One more thing. I would just say there are definitely times also when getting feedback, notes on a paper, whatever, typed out on a computer is much more clear sometimes than handwriting. Not to point fingers at anyone, but there are times where you're going back and forth saying, well, what did you write on this line, in this margin, in this comment? A lot of times they're scribbled in, and it can be hard to follow, and sometimes the feedback is less effective than it would be if it was typed out. So I agree with you that
You start to write in the margin and
Right,
run out of
yeah.
space, but
sometimes you get those inline grammar corrections
Yes.
between the line spacing. Yeah, it can be a little difficult sometimes.
Word's comment box just continues to expand.
Absolutely. So I think that sometimes that quickness is also a flaw. So I think that you could make the argument either way.
I'm going to move along to the next question now, and this one is about, in general, how students find Blackboard helpful in studying. And Chris, this one's for you.
Basically, I believe there's two main functions when it comes to students being able to study through Blackboard. The first is posting materials, things including documents, videos, study guides, graphics, things that will basically help a student just to be able to go online, look at something, learn on their own at home. I mean, for example, for a computer design class, you can put up specific program files like Photoshop files, or things like Excel spreadsheets if you're in an MIS class or something. Another class, like a science or engineering class, you can add diagrams or blueprints. In a art and music class, you can add musical pieces, audio files, high quality pictures. But then there's the next function, which is posting external links, which really has to do with going on the internet. And to be truthful, a lot of students do go on the internet before even touching their book, just to find some answers. If they have a question, they'll go right to the internet, go to Google, which is good because there are a lot of resources online. But basically, you have much larger access to all the things I previously listed, and it opens doors to step-by-step tutorials, informative blogs, and educational games even. I mean, the list goes on and on for what you can find on the internet. But an example could be to create maybe like an online flashcards for an exam, and then posting the link to that for your class. You know, it would just be another way to help students be able to study and get all the material from home. Basically, it all accommodates to different learning styles for students, and it significantly helps them learn from home, well, from outside of the classroom, and it's just a broader experience.
Any of the others of you? Features of Blackboard that have been helpful to you? Yeah, Karen.
I have a question. I taught my first online class last summer, and just because it was my first, I kept it kind of simple. And in a recent discussion, my thought was I needed to punch it up and make it a little more entertaining or whatever. But then one of the other faculty members says he intentionally keeps it simple, and you really don't need a lot of bells and whistles. And so, you know, I wanted to know your feedback, and just to give you a little sense, I teach Discovering the News, and so I do have links to what I consider valid news sources, have had NPR video clips and so on in there. So I mean, it's not completely devoid of what an online environment has to offer, but in my mind, it's still kind of like a paper-based course without the paper. So I just wanted to get your feedback on, you know, how you experience the difference, and do you expect a lot more gadgets just because it's online, or is it really just about having the information accessible to you at all times?
Well, I mean, I believe keeping it simple is the best way to go. I mean, for a student to be able to go on and look through a simple list and be able to pick what they think would be best for them to be able to learn through, that would be easiest for students. I mean, sometimes things can get too cluttered where it's like there's, I don't know, might be too many options, and they don't know which one to go to, and they might just, you know, just stop there and not even go on. So.
I know you were talking about an online course. I think it was summer term. I was at the seminar on Friday. So I think for summer term courses where you're not meeting in person, I think it's a lot more important to stay simple so people don't get confused. They might be starting out with Blackboard and not really know the features, and you're not really there in person to show them how it works. But in-person classes, I think you can take it a little bit further, where you can add a bunch more options. If you want to add multimedia study solutions and such, I think it can help some people in those cases, but you definitely, I don't think it helps a lot of students to go completely overboard and add so many options that they really don't know what they have to do versus what they can do if they want it and if it helps them.
I also think it can really depend on not only the course you're teaching, but the age level or the types of students that are in the class. I think as you go up in age, people are less likely to need help and less likely to need a guiding hand through things. But I think for a freshman level course, offering a lot of different perspectives and different ways to get to the same conclusion, whether you offer a few video clips and a few handouts, and a few just different ways so that people with different learning styles can get there, I think that's definitely an issue. I think you have to kind of take each group of students into account when you build it, and I think that there are classes where you really don't need to post too much. It's pretty straightforward. There might be a great book with it, but there might be others where the book doesn't do a great job, and there's a lot of open questions and a lot of things that they can't find easily. And so if you help direct them, I think it can be very beneficial. There's definitely been classes where I've wished there was another resource other than the book I bought, or it can really be beneficial.
Other questions on this topic?
What about online texts? Are those more useful than print texts?
I would say for certain resources, absolutely. I think a lot of us are in technology majors, and a lot of times those things, when you get them, they're out of print already, they're behind. So for certain majors, I think there's a lot more current information online that you can find. Some classes would not apply. Art history probably does not make a big difference, for example. But I think it kind of can be specific to the class. If you find good materials, good material is going to be good whether it's a book or whether it's online. I think something that is well written and gets to the point, no matter what medium it's through, is going to do the job.
What I found is students, particularly in lower level classes, not coming in accustomed to reading. And so I'm wondering if having the content in an online format rather than on a page might be more effective.
Could be for some people, I think. Some people will definitely be more used to reading online because that's probably what they do in a lot of their free time. But I think there is a lot of merit in a book form because if they want to just go outside and read, they can do that. I don't know if they're going to be doing that with coursework, but basically you don't have to sit in front of a computer. It's the same thing kind of with grading assignments. Professors don't really, I think it's tougher to read online for extended periods of time and grade online, or on the computer rather than online. I think the same thing kind of happens with students. I think it'll help some, but others still want the paper back.
I think the biggest thing about it is just giving options. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time to find some really good links that are out there and things like that. So once you've found them, you can reuse them year to year or semester to semester. So I think if you put one or two extra options online that maybe in a traditional, or previously you might not have even offered at all, I think it just helps students in general. And it's the kind of thing that once you find it once, you can reference it for the next couple of years. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time to put up the links on Blackboard.
Okay. Someone brought up the Grade Center, I think it was Barbara, and that's the subject of our next question. From a student perspective, why is the Grade Center, what value is the Grade Center in Blackboard? And Kevin, this one's for you.
The Grid Center is probably one of the most talked about and most popular features of Blackboard, that for students at least, they love seeing their grades constantly because they know what they're doing in the class at all times. And if they have pretty much instant feedback, you can set like tests and quizzes up. They can take the quiz, it'll be automatically graded if it's just multiple choice and that kind of stuff. And they can see their grade within 5 seconds after taking their test. And that really gives them an idea of what happened. They don't have to wait a week till the next class, something like that, to see their grade. For more things that require grading by the professor, an essay, something like that, it'll still take some time before a grade would appear because it has to be graded. But you can still post it online and they'll see it possibly before next class, maybe a few days later. Students really like to see that because they want to know how they're doing in class. If they need to improve on certain things, they can see that immediately and they can really see the impact of what possibly one assignment would do for them. If they get a low grade on something, they know they need to do better on the next thing. And the lack of feedback in some classes can really be a problem for students because they get disinterested and they don't put as much work into the class if they know that a grade isn't going to appear. It's kind of like the reward thing. Students like to see a reward, and the grade really is that. Even if it's not a good one, they still have some feedback, and that feedback is very important for students.
I'll just add a little bit to that. From my point of view, the few seconds it takes me to set that up is definitely worth it because students, I haven't had a student ask me in 3 or 4 years, how am I doing in this class? And that's wonderful for both of us. And pedagogically speaking, it's really important for students to have feedback along the way so they know how they're doing, so they know what they need to do as they continue on. So I think it's a great feature.
Definitely.
And my students complain to me that they don't understand why everybody isn't using it. It's from their point of view, it is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a very important feature, I think, and it's very advantageous for the classes that do use it. And it really, I think it does help professors as well because they're not going to have a student come up in the last week and say, I handed it in, but it's not on Grade Center, so clearly you didn't hand it in. And that would be something that they would have noticed months ago if the assignment had been due months ago, and they really wouldn't be able to come to you in the last week and say whatever their excuse is. It just, they've known that for the longest time and they've chose to ignore it or whatever.
About online quizzes or tests, I usually set them. There's a period of time when they can open and do it freely, and I follow the students, and they usually try the test or thing at the last minute.
Yep.
And there were a few times that students said that they were doing it, but the Blackboard didn't let me, or I didn't have access to all the material online, and I find that very unlikely. But it's a problem that, I don't know, how do you feel about it? That you have everything, all your materials, depending on having a good connection, depending on having...
There are a lot of resources on campus. There will be computers here that will work for Blackboard. As long as they can find a computer to go to, they will be able to take the test in most cases. There are a few technical issues of them getting kicked out of the test, something like that, which might require an email to the professor to sort out. Generally, there are ways to work around any problems. If they're at home and their internet connection is not as good as here, then they might have to go to a library, something like that, but there's public libraries with computers. They will be able, if they're trying hard enough, they'll be able to take them.
So you have not encountered problems with accessing the Blackboard?
That can't be resolved with a simple email. Generally, you can fix any problem that would come up, if they're so inclined to do so. Yeah. That might be.
But that, from our side, can be used as an excuse from the student side as why they were prevented from
I wouldn't really take
completing.
it beyond, can I have another attempt at the test because I got kicked out, something like that. I really wouldn't take, like, I didn't do the test at all, and a week later I'm telling you about it. That would be, I think, a ridiculous excuse for a student to try. But if it's immediately after the test, they tried to get it, you can see if they try to get it in with an attempt. And if they get kicked out, something like that, then I think the professor can probably give another attempt and assume that the student actually did get kicked out.
And there are an occasional technical glitch or two with certain browsers, and the biggest suggestion is just to advise everyone to use Firefox. Folks know what that is, or we can talk to you later about that, but it's the most consistent browser for Blackboard, and there's the fewest glitches with that, especially with the test. Other than that, I mean, there really are not that many big issues, and it's nothing that shouldn't be easily resolved. So if you have a student who's repeatedly doing that, it's much more likely that they're trying to look for a way around it.
Also, a way that you can avoid having those issues is to post a practice exam online that they have to take at the beginning of class on the computer that they plan to take the quizzes on.
I
So,
usually do that.
yeah.
But even then, there are always something come up with justification that the connection wasn't working, the Blackboard didn't work. And so I don't know if there's a way of verifying from the computer support if there was a glitch, an actual glitch from the computer, from the university side.
You will see, if they try to enter the test at all, you'll see an attempt in Blackboard. And if they save any answers, you'll see the answers that they did save. So if you set it up so you see one question at a time, you can set that. and the student will have to save every question rather than progress. Sometimes you get a full list of questions, and they don't have to save it at all until they submit it. But if you go one by one, you can see how far they got, and if you feel that it's actually a legitimate thing.
And I do want to say that there are some legitimate technical issues that go on. One of them was pointed out to me by Eric Boisvert, who works with the help desk in the computer support area. He is an adjunct instructor, and he said some of the mice have a little roller on the side, and it actually is to go back and forth in your browser. And if they're in a test and they accidentally move their thumb on that, it acts as though it did a back browser button. And if you said you can only take the test once, and they just inadvertently kick themselves out, they can't get back in. And so that is a very legitimate one. He had pointed that out to me, and I'm not sure if it's on our website. We try and list things on our website to help faculty, and you might look there as well on the FCLD website.
So what can faculty members tell their students that are going to help them avoid, I mean, let's say we're talking about students who are making a good faith attempt, not students that are trying to somehow game the system. Making good faith attempt, what can faculty members tell them? You said one thing, Firefox is going to work better for you. Is there anything else?
A lot of my professors use 2 attempts for their test, and it's still set within an hour time length, and you can look at both attempts so you can see if they finished one, got the answers, and went back and put all the right answers in for the second one. You would have to check that out. But basically, if they get kicked out the first time, they still have a second try without emailing you, so you wouldn't have to actually do anything as far as seeing if they got kicked out of the test. That just kind of helps to prevent any unnecessary work if they do hit the back button, something like that. A lot of students, even if you tell them don't hit the back button, and if you mention the mouse problem, they'll probably realize that and be very careful not to hit it.
Other questions about this?
I got one
Yes,
comment
please.
about your question, is that I don't know whether this would resolve or not, but when we used to all take a test at the same time, and everybody, bam, it would croak. And so it was, so we simply did it by, or you do it, then you do it, then you do it. But I think lately I haven't experienced that problem. Is that still up, or did they fix that?
It's hard to say. We're getting less, certainly, faculty coming back to us. So what he's addressing is if you actually proctor in a lab, then there was a bottleneck. If everybody hit the go button on the test at the same time, then it did cause a technical glitch. And we're hearing less of it. Lisa, maybe you can put your 2 cents in. But that was a definite problem when we were telling people, do it row at a time, you go, and stagger the entry into the test. But I actually do think that Blackboard's worked hard to resolve some of the issues on the tests, and that one may be resolved at this point. I certainly haven't heard as much.
I've heard very few issues, calls into FCLD for test issues, basically, far less than even 3 years ago.
And I think one of the best practice we hear, and we try to share things we hear from other instructors, but one thing is I hear over and over again is have one test that's droppable, we're going to drop one, and essentially get all the problems taken care of on the first test. And what I've heard is if you do that, all the rest of them are pretty smooth from there on out, that people get it pretty quickly. Well, that's it. You blew it on the first one, and now you have to do well, and so the sort of glitches go away very quickly.
Before we leave this, I just want to, we've been talking a lot about quizzes, but I want to go back to something that was said pretty early on. How many of you are teaching first-year students? Look at that. Most of you, at some point or another, are teaching first-year students. One of the things that we find in trying to do better with first-year students, and maybe you can confirm this, is that there's one of the biggest adjustments between high school and college is the frequency of feedback. And that the notion that somebody could go 4, 5, 6 weeks into a course without any concrete sense of how they're doing it's pretty much a foreign concept from a high school environment. And if that happens, then it's much harder to get hold of a student that's not doing well and take some corrective action. So the notion of frequent feedback, and I believe you were saying that a student can go any time and get a sense of how they're doing. I'm sure that's important for any student, but it is especially important for first-year students.
One thing I noticed with using the grade center, and mine was set up so that at any point a student could see how he or she was doing compared to perfect score. You know, you should have 200 points by now. If you only have 60, you need to pick it up and fast. The end result for me, I mean, yes, it was work, very consistent work in making sure grades got posted quickly, but I didn't have one request for like extra credit work, because nobody was surprised at the end of the semester on where they were. Like, oh my God, you know, can I do something to get myself up to a B? Because it was there for the whole semester. So it was work as it went along, but it was much less work at the end, either fending off the people who wanted extra credit when they missed 2 assignments. You know, you don't get to do an extra credit to tie me up when you miss 2 assignments that you didn't bother handing in. But people who worked hard all semester and didn't make the grade, I would usually give another chance to, but I didn't need to, because they knew very quickly when they needed to pick it up.
Okay, I know I certainly have used groups and group projects and teams of all kinds in my classes. I know a lot of professors that have tried that. I don't know any who have tried it and had it go really smoothly the first time they tried it. It's a new thing, it's a different pedagogy. So a question that I'd like the panel to talk to is, how is Blackboard useful, the group function in Blackboard? Is it useful for facilitating team work? And Anthony, this one's for you.
Blackboard groups, I feel, are very helpful because of the quick collaboration tools. There's live chat for one thing, which Blackboard has, so group members from the team members of each group can sign in at the same time and talk to each other. For example, if they have conflicting schedules and they can't meet up anywhere, they could use the live chat, sign in, and talk about their group, their topic, or whatever they were working on. Another thing they could use is the group discussion board, which also it's like chat also, but it's not live. They could leave messages to each other, and when they have time, look into it, see what their group members have said, give their feedback, check back later to see what the response was. And there's also the file sharing that Blackboard has for the groups, where they could leave documents for the other group members to look at, like a Word document that they typed up for their, let's say I had a group presentation with my communication class. I could leave we had to create an outline of our debate. That was the group project. So I could leave the outline there, my portion, and so my group members could look at it and add whatever they wanted to add, and it works like that. So I think it's very helpful.
Anybody else? How about questions on that one? On the whole group function? How many of you have tried that? Sure. Has that been successful for you?
For myself, I hadn't tried it before. I had a class, one of my groups came to me and said, can you create a discussion topic for us? I was like, what? I never thought of it for group work. Never once. I was like, oh, yeah, you could do group work through Blackboard. They're like, can we do that so we can talk to each other? And it was pretty refreshing, even looking at what they were talking about and seeing the discussion that they were having.
And was that easy?
Yeah.
I mean, was it easy
It was a simple
technically
one.
for you?
He sent an email saying, can you create one that says group 5? I created it and they just went off.
Yeah, it's very helpful. Like I said, when the schedules for the team members, they conflict and they can't meet up anywhere, and so they could just use the collaboration tools and they could work with each other like that.
Other questions or comments about this one?
I actually have a question probably for faculty who've set up groups. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I hated working as part of a group. I mean, you always get the person who doesn't, and I don't use groups because my experience as being a part of a group, I always felt like I got burned. But, you know, hearing you talk about how your group can function online, I assume that as a faculty person, I could track if I insisted that all group work be done through Blackboard, then as a faculty person, is it true that I could evaluate and I could see who was the missing link in a group? Is that true? Because that to me has been the downside of using groups as a faculty member, is because you just know that the group is going to get a grade and somebody in the group doesn't deserve it.
But you could monitor the groups, like when you create a group, the people you put into it are the only ones who can go into that group. But you, as a professor, you can go to any group and you can see what has been posted, what the replies have been, and you can see who's giving more input if you listen.
My experience is you have to make yourself a member of each group. So just be sure to put yourself in each group, and then you can go in and do it.
Well, you can see, as you say, who's been checking, what they've contributed, who's never online, who's not responding to emails. So in some ways, you can easily document why you're not getting the credit.
Yeah, you'll see a list basically of who's been posting. If you're using the discussion board, you can see who's uploading files. You'll basically, I think there's even a way to count how many posts everyone has in the discussion boards. You can see if somebody has a 0, then clearly they're not doing much. I would be careful grading completely on that though. Some people might meet up and one person's just more talkative and others doing more work. I don't know. Some people might not write on the discussion board, but they might be doing other tasks. It's difficult, I think, with the current Blackboard setup to monitor everything a group might be doing. Discussion board is definitely useful, but it's probably not everything that a group would be working on.
Great. Okay. Moving on to our final pre-established question. And this one is for Michael. And the question I have here is, how are students using mobile devices in the classroom? It occurs to me as I read it that perhaps I should say, how are students making productive use of mobile devices in the classroom?
I mean, I'm absolutely the student who is yelled at constantly, put your phone away, put your phone away, put your phone away. And my argument is my smartphone is my computer. I go to class, and especially this year, so many smartphones are coming out. The tablets are all out. iPad is a big name that's out there right now, but there's going to be a lot of devices like that by the end of the year. And my argument is everything I have is on my phone. And very rarely am I actually using it for something that's not productive in the classroom. I have a calendar application for my assignments. I put everything in my calendar. I have my email on there. There's an app for Blackboard. There's word processing. You can type on there, and believe it or not, I mean, those keyboards work. You can do word processing, note-taking. There's communication tools, which work good and bad. You can be there instant messaging your friends, or you can be going across the room saying, what was that number for that page that we're supposed to be on? And very quietly, you can very quickly catch yourself up if you miss something. And that happens a lot more than you believe. Also, all the book manufacturers are coming out with books designed to work on a multitude of platforms. So that books, phones, e-readers, laptops, everything. You legitimately can have your books up and scrolling through them. Handouts, when I have them from Blackboard, you can have everything right there with you in your palm. And it's hard to know as an instructor, I understand what somebody's actually doing on the other side of that. And the notion for a long time has been that, oh, you must be text messaging. Well, very rarely is that actually the case, for me at least. And I'm sure there are students who are not being responsible and are using it inappropriately. But I really believe that it's my computer when I'm in the classroom, and that's how I use it. And so I think there sort of needs to be a change of perception of what people are actually using them for. And there's a lot more ways to use them productively than I think in the past.
Okay, you did mention that you saw it as you putting yourself in the role of the instructor.
Right, absolutely.
Is this not the end of class discussions as we have known them?
I don't think so. I think that it's just another tool. I think that they're getting to the point with the phones now where they can do almost everything you traditionally use a laptop for.
I understand.
And so
their competence. I'm saying, if you were the instructor, and you had a class of 25 students, and even 15 of them were doing just what you've just described, come on. There's not going to be any class discussion.
See, I would disagree with you. I think that I use that to supplement what's going on in the classroom. I think that I'm, in most of my classes, very, vocal and I'm always speaking and whatnot, but at the same time, whenever somebody brings up an assignment or something, my first thought is reach for my pocket, grab my phone, it's going right in the calendar. And that doesn't mean I'm texting or anything else, it just is, that's just my way of storing the information, and I very rarely have a pen and pencil in the room, and my eyes are up much more because I'm not this sitting down scribbling. I can type quicker and more effectively into that. Somebody says, you know, pull out the assignment, whatever, I'm not printing anything, I'm pulling out my BlackBerry to look at, you know, what did I have off the internet, load Blackboard, what was the document, and it's a really effective way of quickly getting to everything all in one place. And I don't have to be flipping through pages in a notebook or whatever. I know where it's stored, and it's really effective for me to stay organized that way.
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering if you all have a sense of what percentage of the student body has regular access to smartphones now, and the level of the integration of those smartphones into their academic studies.
Well, I've been reading a lot in preparation for this specifically, and the projection is that by the end of the year or midway through next year, the #1 way that a student will access the internet will be through their phone. Meaning that when you say to somebody, hey, can you look this up for me? They're not going to say, okay, let me go to my computer. They're going to pull their phone out, and that's the way they're going to get online. So it may not be the way that they do all their work or anything else, but if you pose a question to somebody and it relates to them getting on the internet some way, their first option is going to be the phone. And with all the next generation of phones coming out, they're almost entirely smartphones. In the next 2 years or so, it's going to be hard to buy a traditional cell phone. It's just not going to be offered.
If you don't mind my following up, those projections have been around for a while, for 2 or 3 years, and we've been kind of watching it. And the question is, you know, is this actually materializing? Everybody says it's going to happen. Is it here? So I guess my question is, what is your actual perception of what's happening based on your knowledge of your peers in classes, dorms, whatever?
I think everybody is trying to get one of these devices. They are still expensive, and there are still a lot of costs involved with that, but I think the vast majority of students either have one or are looking to get one and looking forward to it. A lot of people like the iPhone, that's a popular one, but there's a lot of options. And it's definitely the one that people are trying to get or want to have, even if they don't currently. So that's definitely the mindset moving forward, I think. And then we haven't really mentioned tablets, but there's a lot of these coming out this year, other than the iPad, and books especially. All the book manufacturers are trying to find ways to make books digital and trying to reinvent what a book can do on a screen like that in that format. So I think even in the fall semester, you're going to see more students in your classes who have a device like that, an 8-inch or 10-inch little screen that flicking around on the whole time, and the books more and more will be going that way.
It's not directly related to that, but it's related to the communication. In the Blackboard, you can communicate with students through their communication button or send an email. And the email would be mailed to the email from the university, what's stored there. But I know students have other emails. I have received emails from their BlackBerries, and I have students from different courses, and then they have different names. And if they don't announce themselves very well, I have to be figuring out and where to put them. It becomes kind of
Absolutely.
messy from our organization side to receive these different forms of communication instead of being all centralized into
I think it's the responsibility of the student to make sure that they're using their Hartford email account. I know I use Gmail, and I have all my Hartford mail forwarded in there, but every time I respond, I'm at least attempting to do it from my Hartford account. Unless I know the professor personally and I know that they're going to know who I am. But especially the first time I have somebody, I try to make sure that I always reply from the correct account. But I don't think that that's the responsibility of professors to sort through. I mean, I've had teachers before who, I think understandably so, will not accept email if it's not from the account you're registered with. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they shouldn't be expected to filter through 4 or 5 email addresses to figure out who someone is.
So do you think it should be something to be announced in the beginning of the course?
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Or
worth it to
is
put a line
that-
in the syllabus saying, this is my policy regarding email, and please respect it. And I think that students should do that. It's not that difficult to make sure that they do that.
One way to kind of get around that is not giving them your email address separately, and they have to use Blackboard. You can send an instructor, so they'd have to log into Blackboard, and that is attached to their email unless they change it. But it normally is still their Hartford email address.
Isn't that available if you search inside the Blackboard? I don't know, from the student
They
side?
can get it if they want to, but a lot of students will go directly to the email link under communication on Blackboard and just click instructor, and that would default to their Hartford email address rather
That's
than
true.
having to type in your address. Yeah.
How friendly are you finding the mobile web presence at the university website, the library's registrar, all the things you have to do on a daily basis online? Can you actually get it on your mobile? I mean, I know you can look at regular web pages and zoom in and zoom out, but that's not the same as actually being optimized for the devices.
It's definitely not where it needs to be yet, but it's doable. And all the web browsers on these phones, every new generation, every 3 months, they're getting a lot better. So I think that in the next year or two, you're going to find that it's pretty much the same experience using a small screen as using a larger one. It's definitely not perfect yet. It can be a hassle at times. I know Blackboard especially, depending what kind of phone you have, it has its ups and downs. It's not perfect, but I think students' mindset is to load it that way. So I think the university does need to catch up in some respects. It's not really that bad, but yeah, it's not perfect yet, but I think since everything's going that way, it won't be long before it's a pretty basic experience back and forth. It won't be much different.
Other questions about mobile devices? Yeah.
This isn't so much a question as some information that I'm interested in some reactions to. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues about a week ago, and she had become interested in the impact of particularly laptops, but mobile devices would fall into that category, on student performance. And the reason she became interested in that is that they bought a laptop for their high school age son and discovered that with the laptop he had a lot more stimulation, and so apparently his parents inferred was not focusing as much on the class. And you know, what prompted this inquiry is, in his mother's words, his grades tanked. And so she started paying attention to the students with laptops in her classes and was discovering that in many instances, it wasn't a perfect correlation, that they did not perform as well as the students who were taking notes by hand. And so I'm wondering what observations, insights you might be able to provide us, because we've been sort of kicking this around the department about, you know, should we have a no laptop policy, in first year classes?
My answer would be that I think absolutely whatever device somebody's using is an extension of themselves, meaning that if you're a motivated student, you're going to use things properly to get the most out of the class. And if you're somebody who's there, who isn't motivated, who doesn't care, you're going to be the kid sitting there playing games. And we've all seen it. We've all been behind the kid who's playing solitaire instead of reading or paying attention to a lecture, or behind somebody who's online shopping instead of doing something. And those are the people who don't truly care about their grade in the first place. But I think that for students who do care and are motivated, it's a tremendous tool to have. And any way of keeping organized, and you know, if you have a digital, everything's all in one place all the time, no matter where you go, it can be tremendously beneficial. But I think it does exaggerate whichever direction that student's leaning. So the student who's not really motivated is going to be even worse with a laptop, but one who is can be much more productive. So I definitely think there's pros and cons, but it is an individual kind of experience.
I think it does fall on the professor in the class sometimes too, because I've had a class that the first day no one brought a laptop, and that class didn't go too well. It was kind of boring, everyone's sleeping. And by the last day of class, I looked around and everybody had a laptop. So if a professor's holding the student's attention, I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Do you mean everybody brought a laptop so that they could do something other than be bored,
Right,
or that
exactly.
everybody brought a laptop and therefore they were more engaged in class?
No, because the professor wasn't holding the student's attention, wasn't presenting the material in a way that, you know, stimulated the students, so they would bring the laptop to escape. So, you know, it's also...
This is exactly what I was meaning before. I was wondering what, given the, I have no doubt that what you say, Mike, is going to happen. What in your head, or in your heads, would an ideal class look like? I'm assuming the one you just described, Nick, is not an ideal. That's a farce. That's a waste of everybody's time.
Right.
What would your ideal classroom session be like? Have you thought about that? What you would like it to be like? If you know, what could you go to that class and get from it, apart from this magic motivation that the teachers, you know, can't give you?
Right.
I think that there's still, no matter how much technology you have, I think that there's nothing better than a really engaging, good lecture. And I think that somebody who's a good lecturer who engages the students is going to maintain that same attention even if everybody in there is sitting in front of a screen. And I don't think that that's going to change over time with new technologies and whatnot. And I think that the laptops or phones or whatever just supplement organization and note-taking and things like that. But a really bad lecture is going to be a really bad lecture, whether everybody's sitting in there with a pen and a pencil or a computer. And a really good one is going to be, just the exact opposite. It's going to be engaging, and people are going to be interested. And so I think that some of that does fall on the professor to maintain that. But at the same time, I don't think that technology is to blame. I think it's a student is going to behave a certain way in a classroom regardless of what they have in front of them. And it's just going to be different, if they're playing a game instead of sitting there drawing. And it's not much different. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting notion. I think I agree with you, and you probably know that in academic circles, the lecture has been given, a trashy reputation over the last 20 years, let's say. And I have a feeling that you're right. That well-produced, well-performed, well-executed lectures are going to make a comeback.
Absolutely.
Particularly if they follow a pattern, because you can do what you just said, make whatever notes you wish, make whatever references, make whatever connections you might. I think that's...
I've had courses that on paper should have been the most boring class on my roster, and yet I was most looking forward to it because I was most engaged in what the person was saying, even though it was a topic that maybe I didn't particularly care for. It didn't have to be my major, and I walked into it thinking this is going to really be terrible. And then you have a really engaging lecture, and it's great. It can be a really great experience. So I think it does totally depend on those factors.
We probably have time for one or two more questions if you've got them. I'm not going to go through collecting index cards and go through that exercise. We really don't have time. But are there other things that are on your mind that you wanted to ask? Yes.
Well, I'm worried about the use of Blackboard and the student-to-student interactions as being opportunities for abuse, bullying. There's a brand new app. I think it's in today or this week's Time magazine that when you send the app, it will erase within the time frame that you want it to erase, and it will not be traceable by anyone. There will be no ability to bring it out. You know how we can check emails and we can bring them back and read them. With this new app, it disappears instantly. So it's called the Tiger app because if someone like Tiger wants to send a message to his mistress, it'll erase, and the press won't be able to get it. It's supposed to allow this kind of bullying in an easier way. Is that something that I should be worried about with respect to the safety of my students?
I don't think I'd worry about it too much. Especially if it's a person-to-person face class, they're going to know each other, and they're not, unless they're trying to pick a fight with each other, they're not going to just try to use some technology to cause a problem, I think.
We're all very much into technology, the panel of us, and I don't think any of us have ever heard of that being used or anything like that. So,
can you give me an example? I'm not too sure what.
Yeah, I've never heard of something like that.
What does it do exactly?
It was just announced this week in the newest Time magazine. It's called the Tiger app. And if I send you a message that I don't want you to be able to send on to someone else, I will set it up so that it will erase itself in half a minute. You'll be able to see what I said to you, but no one else will be able to trace, and you won't be able to prove that you were victimized in any way.
Like the tape on Mission Impossible.
Yeah, it's a self-destructive situation.
Let me try and clarify something. If students are communicating with one another through Blackboard, are they, correct me if I'm wrong, they either have to be doing that in real time, or they have to be posting messages on a discussion board, or they have to send an email, which has to go through the University of Hartford email system. Am I right about that?
You are.
And I believe that the app you might be talking about would probably fall under one of the phones where you'd really be using a text message back and forth, and it'd be like a self-destructing text message. So I don't think that that could ever interface with Blackboard in the way that you're concerned about. I think that that would really be a person-to-person, from the description at least. It doesn't sound like something that
Thank you,
would,
Mike.
it sounds more like a text message.
Okay.
And I think that, I mean, that's its own issue, but I don't think that applies to Blackboard.
Yeah, Blackboard is definitely self-contained. It's not going to be, unless somebody is hacking Blackboard, they're not going to be able to do that. And this sounds like a probably isolated application. It probably will get broken soon because that's something that is a security threat, and so that in the wrong hands will incite someone to break it. It's not untraceable, I'm sure. Everything that's sent through the internet is traceable. There are ways that I'm sure people can hide it as much as they want, but eventually if you get enough people that want to break it, if you get law enforcement involved, they will find it, so I really wouldn't worry about it.
We are, we've reached our allotted time, and I wanted to thank Laurel and Lisa for the effort that they put into setting all of this up. I want to thank all of you for taking time at what I know is just a furiously busy time here to come to this presentation. And mostly I would like to thank this wonderful panel who did such a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I do want to point out, Lisa and Laurel had very little to do with this, and to once again point out, this was actually designed, planned, and implemented by the students themselves. So in addition to being our panelists, they also planned this, and hopefully we'll do another one next year.